Recording in progress.
Yeah, we are coming to you live today through Zoom. Usually, when we record our podcast, we've been doing them in person, but because it's the second lockdown in Sydney, we are not in the same space, which is shit because we couldn't
Shit.
celebrate Paisley's birthday in the same
No.
space. So
Couldn't do it because I'm in the piping hot zone.
you're also just letting you know on your P's, you're very plosive at the moment. So maybe just back off the mic a little bit.
Oh,
I
I'm
need to get
doing
you a
too
pop
many
stopper.
Peter Pepper, piking, Perry pornographies.
Peri Peri from Portos, which is your
Uh,
favorite keto at the moment.
yes, it is. Yeah, I'm in the piping uh hot zone right
Piping
now.
hotspot.
Hot spot.
And not in a good way.
No.
Damn.
So Alpha Mama.
Yep.
we both have we have two sides of two different stories to tell today
Piping hot, steaming hot
that
content.
also are very they're in the hot zone. There is a cluster of yeah, hot topics to go on right now.
Shit.
We are got some viruses to unload.
Yeah, we're talking about call outs today. And we've both
Yeah.
had our fair share of brushes with call out culture.
Yeah.
So we're going to go all in.
Yeah. So this week we both had two separate things go on around call out culture and around the BIPOC community. And I think though our two stories are different, we can sort of interweave a story together and see how it goes out to the public. And I feel like it's important that we tell these stories. Yours happened a bit more publicly. Mine happened privately, almost went quite publicly. Um, and yeah, I think, in the spirit of especially episode 4, that trigger warning and us talking about call out culture as like a distant thing from us,
Mm,
now it, quickly manifested right next to us
yeah.
within days to one another. So I feel to
Yes.
continue that conversation from a first-hand experience now rather than an observational experience.
Yeah, I like this. And I think it's really important too, because we were talking about cancel culture. Yeah. When you like
Yeah.
write people off and you cancel them, um, which is almost the experience that you had with a
Yes.
certain group of people. Whereas I don't feel that I went as far as to cancel this person. And I don't think that I have that power anyway,
Yep.
but what I did could be described by some people as calling out. I don't think that I did, but we're going to discuss that in depth in this episode anyway.
Cool. So I guess to start off, maybe it'll be best if we start off in your court because yours happened first. Let's just
Mm.
the only order we'll have in this is chronological, I guess, and I'm sure that will quickly melt away, departicleize. But yeah, well, that's just
Departicleize. Okay. Love that. Well, yeah. Okay. So what happened was, so there's an online festival happening called Essence, and somebody, well, not somebody, I'll just be specific. One of my past clients invited me to it. I think that maybe they're either helping with it or on the lineup. I don't know, but I got a Facebook invitation and I clicked in, and I think I'd already seen some branding around it anyway. And I had an inkling that it was Sigourney's event. Who, for anyone listening, if you don't know, this is Sigourney Bell, who has, I guess she's a leader in the feminine embodiment space slash spiritual business. Has a few books out, has a very big following, built a whole movement called Wild Grace, etc., etc.
boom. I didn't know we were gonna go straight for the name dropping. I'm here for it. I'm here for
Oh,
it.
are
Sucks
we
you.
not? Shit,
No,
I
no,
don't
no. I didn't.
know.
No, no. I'm doing whatever you want to do. This is your side of you're telling me. I didn't know if you were going to go straight in, so that's cool. All right.
I mean, you know me, if I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to talk about it.
Mhm.
It's like if I've decided I'm going in, I'm going in.
Good.
Otherwise,
Good. Cool. I'm here for it.
yeah. So that's who Sigourney is. on a professional slash, who she represents in the community, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
On a personal level, Sigourney and I have had beef in the past around different things. And that's just on a person to person level. I've had a lot of experiences with her where I've been disappointed, and, therefore it's left a bit of a yucky taste in my mouth. And, just, we're fucking human beings. Like I'm always going to respect someone who is helping people in some way in the world. So that can never be taken away from her. Mm-hmm. But in terms of how she conducts her business and different things, there are certain things, value clashes, I will call them.
Yeah.
Right. So there's some value clashes. So anyway, I was invited to this thing and I was curious. So I clicked in and looked at the lineup and I saw like, oh, there's a lot of my friends on this lineup. Cool. Just to be specific, the event is a magic, ritual, and shamanism event, right? Mm-hmm. Which sounds super dope because that's, what we're all interested in, well, our community circle anyway. And there are a few friends that I saw on the lineup, but I didn't see any dark-skinned people, really, just to be fully blunt about it. Like I saw, I definitely, like, there were some people of color on there. So, I got to give props for that, but I didn't see or read any bios because I had to skim through the bios. I didn't read anything that indicated that there was anyone who was Black who was First Nations. And the reason why I say First Nations is because I feel like it's important to distinguish between Indigenous and First Nations. Like there's a uprising now of a lot of white people who are reclaiming their Indigenousness. And, like we are all Indigenous to this planet. So everybody can argue I'm Indigenous to somewhere. Like, yes, I'll give you that. But in terms of representation and in terms of having a diverse and thoughtful, curated event is where my angle was coming from. So I just saw that and I was like, yeah, it's 2021 after 2020 and we had all of that stuff come up. This is a bit of an oversight, in my opinion. However, I also don't know. Maybe there are fucking other speakers that haven't been announced yet. Maybe there was some other, pieces of information that I wasn't like across. So I put a status update on my Facebook page.
As you do.
But this is the thing though, I don't do this anymore. I used to, right? I used to be the queen of polarizing shit and causing mayhem and stirring a shitstorm up on Facebook. I don't do that anymore. I've been really like, holding myself back from that because I don't want to be that polarizing person. But I did it. Because, you and I, you went extreme, you left Facebook, but I followed suit and I unfollowed every single person on Facebook. I was like, I don't need to have everyone's business up in my field. I want to keep my energy clear. And then because of that, my engagement dropped severely on Facebook. So I was just kind of under the impression, like, no one reads my shit now. I'm like, whatever, I'll post it just because I'm there, but I don't really assume that people are actively really following me anymore.
Or was it to get your engagement up?
Oh, shit. Maybe subconsciously I'm open to that. Maybe it's possible. But anyway, this is what I wrote. I wrote another magic / shamanic / embodiment event with a lack of Indigenous / Black representation, where I want to get the fucking wording right because it's important.
Pull it up.
Let me pull it up. Give me a moment.
So just while you're doing that, here, I have no clue any of this is happening at this time because I'm not on Facebook. I've deleted Facebook a long time ago. Not a long time ago, but a year ago at least. And before that, I had done that move, which I feel like we should stop telling people that we do that because I don't want it to become a trend and then everyone else does it and then everyone's just posting but no one is seeing each other's posts.
Yeah, but then these social media platforms are going to have to adapt if everyone does that, Anyway, well, because you got to protect your mental health. That is fucking important. I don't care how much you want to network. It's if your mental health is being affected by this shit, you need to change something. Anyway. So what I said was, another online shamanic ritual magic embodiment festival with hardly any, I said hardly any, Indigenous/Black facilitators.
Yes.
That's all I wrote. That's it. Right.
Yep.
Now, I didn't think too much about it. I just kind of put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And the first few comments that I received, one was, what's the name of it?
Yeah.
And I felt like I didn't want to publicly shame anybody or publicly like expose anyone or kind of call out and detail what this person had done wrong because I didn't have enough information, right?
Yeah.
But off the bat, from my observation, it was like, from what I saw, there were hardly any representation, which to me was accurate, right? But also, if I'm wrong, fucking I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm. From memory, because I went over to Facebook and had a look at it.
You did have a look,
which I can later explain why, but I'm pretty sure that first person that commented that was a person of color, right?
Yes, yeah. It was a woman of color who is in these spaces, who does amazing work in the world.
Yes.
All right. The second person who commented, these people are a problem, which I didn't want to add to that because I feel like I don't agree necessarily with the place that that's coming from. But hey, everyone's allowed to say their piece. And then I think the third comment maybe, or the fourth comment that I got was from Dane Thomas. Now, if you've been listening to our podcast for a while, you'll know that Dane is a very important person in our lives. Yes. He's the creator of the Spiral, which is the modality that Paisley and I both trained in.
Yes. And
he is a very influential person in our community. Yeah. He is a very powerful wizard, right? He's a magical person. So we love Dane. And also Dane is a white male, a cis white male who has a level of privilege and who historically hasn't always been willing to, I guess it maybe like wear that privilege with a lot of self-awareness. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I just know that there's been sticky moments in the past, right?
Been sticky moments.
Sticky moments. Dane's been called out for different things by different people. So that, there's junk there.
But he's also at the same time, maybe in my perception and the way I've witnessed is maybe not immediately able to take on everything, but does go back and sit with it for a while and then does adjust, just not, it's sort of like the, if you look at the, like, I don't know what all the millennials, the Gen Zs, the blah, 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 is like, you look at, it's like the pronouns thing, like someone will mispronoun and then they'll excuse themselves or like, but then just the younger people just get it, and then the ones like the oldest, they're like, I'm not doing that. The ones before that, they're like, he, him, it, them, sorry, I feel like that's Dane, he's like in that phase of he's like, he does want to do right, but it just takes a moment to actually adjust.
Sure. And, like, again, like I think everybody is strong and weak in different areas. And I think the area of social justice has maybe not been Dane's strongest point because he's been developing himself in other areas. I think that's a very diplomatic way of saying it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dane wrote a very long comment on my post. And not only that, messaged me on WhatsApp with some voice messages. And the gist of what he was trying to communicate, I won't read it out. It's online if you want to see it. But the gist of what he was saying was basically like, yes, and, yes, and you shouldn't, so he was wanting me to do better as a leader in the community, saying, if I want this to happen, as in more diverse spaces, then this is the wrong way of going about it. I should have contacted the organizer directly instead of publicly creating this polarizing post. Now everyone's jumping on them and creating mayhem.
Yes.
Which I heard, but I was also like, it's a little bit hypocritical considering some of the shit that you've done on the internet, but hey,
polarizer.
Exactly. But, I heard him because I understand where his heart's at.
Yes.
but I also think that there are some things in the dynamic of racial and social justice that it's like, you aren't the right person to educate me in this area. And I think that in some areas, like, you know, we both paid money to learn from him. So of course I fucking love and respect him, but there's some things that I'm like, I don't think that you really can understand and see things from all perspectives in this particular matter. So anyway, we had a back and forth about it, all from a place of love. Like, you know, we love each other, and there's some things that we fundamentally probably disagree on.
Yes.
So that was a one long thing. And then Dane's wife, Mia Moore, also added a big piece. And a lot of people ended up jumping on this comment thread with different perspectives. And a big undertone of what was shared was like, are white people not shamanic enough? Are white people, is our magic like not legit? You know, do we have to be black? Do we have
not
to be
shamanic enough?
Am I not magic enough? This will be the snippet at the beginning of the
podcast. I love you, Mia. I'm not taking the piss out of you. I'm just making jokes.
Well, yeah, you know, and I feel like we have that relationship with each other.
We love all these people. This is, you know, I'm curious to see as this podcast goes forward and we're going to talk about these things, like, because I don't get into any of these back and forth with anyone, because mostly that happens on Facebook. I don't get into back and forth with my friends around these things, you know, around polarizing topics anymore, you know, but when we're going to unpack some of this stuff, and I'm sure certain people will feel a way, and, you know, like, so far of the people that we're talking about, I have a lot of love for. And who knows how they'll take it, but continue.
So when I did that, I was like, oh, okay, it seems I've created a splash in the ocean now and the ripple effects are happening. And Dane was like, yo, you're a powerful person. You can do better than this. If you do want to foster community, there's a better way of doing it, which I agree.
Yes.
I agree. There is a better way of me, if I really wanted to foster community. I mean, you know, Siggy and I already have a strained relationship, and, you know, that potentially added to it last year. And the reason why I said another festival was because last year, and I addressed this later on, last year there were a few online, you know, festivals and summits in the wider spiritual community, embodiment festivals. And there was a lot of public calling out around the ways that they could have done things better.
Yes.
And because it was so public, I would assume that anyone in a leadership position would have learned from those experiences and would have the foresight to go, how can I, and not just in a tokenistic way, but actually I would assume that people would have taken the opportunity to do their shadow work around that shit last year and get a bit cleaner around that and really ask themselves, where do I stand on this? And from what I saw, there were some ripples in the Wild Grace community as well. And Sigourney's stance was very much like, I'm not going to pander to you and buy into your racial discussion because I'm not about that.
Yeah.
So for me, if I already know that a person is not interested, I'm not going to keep trying to change their mind. That's not what I'm interested in. But my hope would be that the people who are close to her and who do care about her will maybe have a word to her, because it's like, obviously there's not enough rapport between her and I for me to go to her and try and educate her. I had a similar experience with Vanessa Florence last year, which I also publicly talked about, because I think it's good for these things to be out in the open. And I gave Vanessa the opportunity to have this conversation, and to be frank, she just was not interested. So it's like, all right, if you're not interested, me as a woman of color, I'm not going to force you to change your mind and care about people like me. If you don't care, you don't care. And also I just want to name, like, Sigourney is a woman of color. I don't know if she identifies that way, but I know she has Chinese heritage. So she, you know, her and I look very similar. We're very white passing, but we do have Asian heritage. But I don't know if she identifies it. I don't know. That's not my business, right? But anyway, for me, it's like I perceive that there's a lack of interest and a lack of care. But that's my fucking perception. Who the fuck knows, right? So anyway, I wasn't going to engage in any of the public comments But then it just kind of built up and built up. I was like, I need to say something now because I can't just drop a bomb and run away. I feel like that's irresponsible.
Yes.
So then I started kind of, replying little bit by little bit and holding the stance that I hold, which is the thing that pissed me off. And I want to put a caveat and say, even though I was charged and pissed off, I also get it. And I get it because I've been this person. And sometimes I still am this person. So it's not from a place of like, I'm better than you. You guys are fucked up because you haven't done your work. Like, I get it because I've been the person who is completely insensitive. And to be honest, I've been super ignorant about this shit. And I've been in similar positions where I've argued the arguments of like, but we're all one global happy family. It shouldn't matter the color of your skin. And and it's like, that's reverse racism and all these like things that now make me cringe that I read in the comments of people saying. It was like, this is so gross. How can it be 2021 and you're still saying this shit and you don't know that that's really just problematic? Yeah. I was that problematic person and can still be because there are certain things I don't know, right?
Yeah.
So naming that, what pissed me off was the white people who jumped on this post to defend themselves. Yeah. And I'm like, I never fucking attacked you. So the fact that you now feel you need to defend yourself tells me that you aren't clean around this shit. This post was to advocate for culturally diverse people, was to advocate for specifically Indigenous and Black people. That's who the post was for, right? To advocate for them. So now all these white people are commenting with their assumptions and with their associations and their meanings and what it means to them personally. And how can you say that blah, blah, blah? And it's like, I never fucking said that, right?
Oh my God. It's so fascinating, like, because if I can be the same in a manner of like, as a white male, like I sometimes see posts of like people of color calling out or like bringing up these topics, and I'm like, and it's got nothing to do with me. Like they're just saying, hey, they could be more people of color, more Indigenous people, more First Nations people on these things or whatever. And I see, and I'm like, hey, like what the fuck? And but I witness it. Like I'm someone that does work. I'm like, the worst thing I could do right now is comment on this and like try and defend myself when it's actually got nothing to do with me. Like, yes, I'm going to acknowledge that energy is coming up in me and I'm going to take that and maybe talk with a friend, maybe reach out to someone like a friend of color and get a bit of perspective on it, whatever it is. But like, I'm not going to put that energy public because it's like, especially being someone that like, I'm maybe like a micro influencer that is within personal development spaces. Like I don't want to just show my weak spots so publicly.
Show the work that you haven't done.
Show the work that I haven't done because, and this is something I want to talk about later, but like, because I want to make my work inclusive. And if someone of color saw that or seen me trying to defend myself against something that's trying to lift up people of color, I assume they'd automatically go, well, that's not the right person to work with for me.
Exactly. That's the thing. This is the thing. All right. Because last year when the Black Lives Matter uprising was happening, Yana and I, so Yana is another spiral practitioner who is a fucking phenomenal person, is married to Nyaniso, who's a really well-known South African actor and celebrity, right? And he's Black.
Most recently in Beyonce's movie lead role,
Black is King. Yeah. So I'm really close friends with Yana, and when all this stuff, and I was in a relationship with the Black man at the time, Ezria. So all this discussion is happening, and we're having weekly chats about it, and really, trying our best to unpack what's happening for us and trying to educate ourselves and trying to learn from each other and all of this stuff. And we're in privileged positions at the time, Yana and I, because we have partners who are Black and who are willing to have these conversations with us. Not everybody has that privilege. And Yana and I are feeling like, if they're not careful, Spiral's going to cop some shit.
Yes.
Spiral's going to cop some hate. So we reached out to Dane and Zephyria to try and facilitate a conversation that was in-house And our intention was to try and give them some perspectives and some terminology and some language around this stuff so that it could be navigated with as much grace and ease as possible.
Yeah.
And they were both down. Zafiri and Dane were like, yep, down to have that conversation. And then they cancelled because they were facilitating the online practitioner training and they were tired and whatever, it didn't happen. But they never asked to reschedule. And I think they did other things with other people. So they did continue those conversations, but not with Yana and I.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, I'm glad that you're continuing these conversations. But like, to be frank with you, the reason why I wanted to have these conversations with Dane and Zafira with Yana is because we're good bridge people.
Yes.
We're not holding the point of view of the woke activist who is against everyone who is against me. We're holding the point of view of like, this is a community of people that we love, the spiral that is,
yes,
and who are really making a difference in the world. And we're passionate about this work and about this community. And we're also really fucking passionate about social justice, about racial justice. And we want to make this transition as smooth as possible and create a bridge between the two worlds. So when that was kind of like not picked up, I was like, oh, I hope this goes okay. And then not long after that, shit blew up, right? Yeah. And I knew that was going to happen. It's like, I knew it was going to happen. I wanted to try and help with it, but it happened anyway. And that's fine. It had to happen and it's all perfect.
Yeah.
So that's a little tangent. Yeah, go.
So during all this, so like Sigs and I are friends. We talk quite often on social media. Like, we don't hang out very often. When we do, we have some really nice flirty friendship vibes going on. And I've got a podcast coming up that she's going to be on Curious Conversation. So I was just talking to her and then she's like, oh shit, like, I'm doing this festival. Do you want to be on it? And I was like, all right, sweet. Whatever you're doing, I'm always here to support. And then a couple of days later, I don't want to go super into detail about what our private conversation was, but just to sort of acknowledge where I tie into this conversation is, she inboxed me and was just sent me a screenshot of this post that I have no clue about on Facebook.
Right.
And it's like of her taking a picture of it saying, assuming this is the post says, another online shamanic magic embodiment festival with hardly any Indigenous Black facilitators.
It was my post, yeah. But you didn't know that.
I didn't know that because it doesn't say whose post it is, and then it's her post saying, assuming this is what I've created, I'll be doing a formal write-up about this tonight once I've landed after travels. Watch your space. And I didn't know who it was from, and I just replied, fair enough, a good nudge into more diversity with a heart.
I love that that's your authentic response, even knowing that it wasn't my post. Because see, that to me is an indicator that you're fucking real and you're authentic and you genuinely fucking care. And you're not just saying what you think you need to say. It's like, because Siggy's your friend, you could have just jumped to her defense, but you didn't because you genuinely care. So I just wanted to say that.
And then after that, I wrote, I sort of didn't want to do it, but then I couldn't help myself. I was like, who posted it?
Just a little bit of sprinkles of,
And she's like, there's already a huge range of diversity on the lineup that we haven't released. Because I know on that, which I don't know, you may or may not have seen, it does say on the front page, we are releasing people as we go. This isn't the full lineup. Like, because I was on it and I hadn't even been announced yet, Right. And I don't know who else is on there. And then she wrote, Alpha, ha, ha, ha. I feel like she's got a personal agenda against me and it's not clean. And I was like, oh, I don't have Facebook. I hate Facebook. And we're having a bit of a talk. And I just said, hey, look, FYI, I've seen Alpha call multiple platforms out for a lack of diversity, and went on to sort of name a few people that have done that before. And I was like, I can't really speak to the personal stuff. And then I was just like, hey, look, I've got to tell you, like, I understand that this might be upsetting for you when you feel like you actually have put in the effort to this, and it's not, you haven't released the full lineup. And I'm sorry if this brings any stress to you, if this throws you a bit off course, but I also hope it puts a flame under your ass to just go harder, like to just go, you know what, like, fuck you for calling me out. Here's the whole fucking nation of Indigenous and Black people here to fucking take over this whole festival. I didn't say that, but along those lines. And I was like, but also I got to let you know, like, I really respect Alpha for doing that. It's scary doing things like this, and it's important that these conversations happen. And then the sort of the conversation come to a, and at that time I was thinking like a bit about the personal stuff between you two, and I was thinking about that conversation that we had recently had on the podcast around, like, if you're going to call someone out, you've got to call them back in. And I was curious about where you were at that point around it, and I wanted to have a chat to you, which we did have a chat, and you sort of explained a bit. But yeah, I'm curious for maybe anyone that's listening that may go, hey, like, in that episode you said that this does seem a bit like hypocritical.
Yeah, I'm happy to wear that for sure. And, like I addressed in the beginning, it's true. Sigourney and my friendship isn't fully clean. Like, and there are reasons for that.
Yeah.
And this is something that I also want people to know. Because one of the arguments on the comment thread was, what if I reached out to an Indigenous person and they said no? Yeah. What if I did try and ask them and they didn't want to come on board? It's like, there's a reason. If someone doesn't trust you, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
If you have always been warm and genuine and authentic and always have done your best in that relationship, why would a person not trust you? And I'm talking right now about the relationship between white people and non-white people, let's say, right? So it's like, if you are a person facilitating some event and you've reached out to all these Black people or Indigenous people and all of them said no, is that not a fucking indicator that maybe you haven't built some relationships, that maybe you actually haven't given a shit enough to make them feel honored and seen and respected and loved, right? So to me, the relationship with Sigourney is very similar to that, in that I don't trust her because of the experiences that I've had with her. Right. And I just, it's like, yeah, it's personal for sure. And yeah, there's charge there, but there's a reason for that. And that's not saying, I'm not saying that I put that post up to specifically, call, if I wanted to fucking call someone out for real, I would put their name there. I would say what the festival is, but I didn't do that because to me, that what I did was not a call out. To me, that's an observation. I looked at something. I could have been wrong. It was like, to me, it was open-ended. It was like hardly any. I could have been wrong. And I addressed that when I finally did my fucking comeback piece. And I just went in and I explained everything and then I left it.
Follow-up post.
I did.
Just to like continue to make sure for people that are listening, like, I also want to acknowledge for that post that you did do, the initial post, it was like, for the wider community, 99% clear who you're talking about though, right? I feel like anyone in those comments, people did say who is it, but to me it's like, because the festival says like Essence, a shamanic magic embodiment festival, and you said another shamanic magic embodiment festival, and it's like, well,
okay, but tell me this, it could have been handled so much quicker, right? Let's say someone who was involved in that festival just commented and said, actually, we do have Black and Indigenous facilitators. Here are their names. They're going to be released shortly.
Yeah.
Would have been fucking done. Full stop. Right? But it wasn't. What it did was stir up all these white people's emotional baggage around their whiteness. And it was like, all right, so I put up a post advocating for Black and brown people and you made it about you.
Okay.
That's what happened. It's like,
Yeah.
And this happens all the fucking time. It's like, and me and my whiteness, and now it's about me. It's like the brown people on the post shared the shortest fucking comments, and the white people shared these long ass comments, and it's like, and you're taking up all the space again. It's like, and like, I just want to say, this is not coming from a place of I hate you. It's like, I love you, and also like, really, you still don't know that, like, it's like, that's all it is to me. And then, all right, and because Dane had said that she came back with a polarizing post, and I went to have a look, and I read through it, and she was talking about the roots of shamanism. And it's like, okay, so now we're using language to justify it now, instead of just saying, actually, you know, like, here are the things. And I'm not owed that. It's not like you owe it to me. It's like, I don't care, you know, if you want to, however you want to do your business, do it that way. It's not that I'm owed an explanation, but I just felt frustrated at all of the different justifications. And it was like, then I became the bad guy.
Yeah.
And I became the bad guy when my intention was to advocate for diversity. And somehow I was calling someone out, and that was wrong. And like comments from white people saying, I agree, but calling someone out is not the way. It's like, well, all right, telling me that I'm doing this wrong. Like, I just want to be honest with you. In my spiritual containers, I always have Black and brown and Indigenous people there. I always have women of color in my spaces.
Yep.
And the reason why they feel safe with me, I'm assuming, is because I advocate for them. It's because I'm an ally, and because I genuinely give a fuck. And I'm not the person who says, oh, I don't see color, we're all the same. It's like, it's bullshit. We're not all the same.
Yeah, well, I'm curious, you know, like, I know I had a scan through the post, but I'm curious with the comments, if there was ever any person of color, especially like dark skinned, that said, hey, Alpha, you could have did this a better way.
Nah,
no,
didn't happen.
Full stop, you know, full stop.
That's what I was trying to say, because Dane was saying the way you're going about it is wrong because it's alienating. And I'm like, oh, who is it alienating to? It wasn't alienating to the people of color in my circle. In fact, it made them trust me more. And what it was exposing. It was very exposing of where people sit in this discussion. And two, it was alienating to white people who aren't comfortable having this discussion. So that's who it was alienating to. So for me, I feel successful in that, because I have enough white friends in my spiritual circles. Most of the people in my spiritual circles are white. And what I want is to bring more fucking diversity into my spiritual circles. And the way that I do that is by advocating for them and speaking up when I see something that I don't feel is fair or is right. And I'm going to fucking get it wrong a bunch. I'm okay with that. I'm at peace with that. And I have got it wrong a bunch in the past. And there's a certain humility I feel that it requires to, be some kind of leader. And like, there are times where I feel like I'm willing to cop flack for this because I feel that it's important enough. And there are other times where I'm like, it's not important enough, and I won't put myself on the ledge like that. But I do want to just say, like, I'm super willing to have this conversation with Sigourney. If she wanted to have this conversation, because I don't think she's a bad person. I just don't think that she has seen things or is willing to see things from this perspective. And that's it. I was very disappointed in her, in her argument back to me, where literally one of the things that she said was, I don't see color. I was like, wow, not to me personally. This is a public post, right? One of the lines in what I saw was like, I don't even see color. Another thing that she said was, she was talking about lineage, and that she respects lineage. And then she was talking about her heritage and her ancestry, that she has some Chinese and whatever other combinations of different things. And I'm like, okay, yes, you are a woman of color by your heritage, but in terms of your cultural upbringing, there are so many layers here. Yeah. It's not just like, and even me, I can't just say, well, I'm a woman of color, so I get a free pass. The level of privilege that I experience as a woman of color is completely different to the level of privilege that, say, a very dark-skinned Indonesian woman would experience, who grew up in Indonesia. I grew up in Australia. I have a level of privilege, and it's the same. It's like, you have to understand that privilege is not just an on and off switch. Like there are varying aspects of this discussion that I think by now we should be across. It's not just about ticking the box, got an Indigenous person, got a blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't know. I just think by this stage, like it would be great to be able to trust that in our spiritual community, we are having these discussions and we're doing our best to be on top of it and not from a place of being on the defense. That's it.
So I feel like it's time to switch over to mine.
Yeah, switching over.
Which is, I don't know how I'm going to go about this in the naming of things. We'll see. But especially because I was advised by like Black friend, that person of color, to actually not address this, but here I am doing it. Roz, I love you. I'm so grateful that you advised me through the situation. So probably the next day, or even the same day that Sigs messaged me. I don't know what day it was, but yeah, I don't think I'm going to name the people that reached out to me. Say their name is minority.
Why though? Why?
Okay. Mostly because I don't really want to be bringing attention to this page, really.
Okay.
But I'm open to it. All right. Because Alpha is putting pressure on me.
I just spilled the tea and on
all right. So it's a page called, I'll have to look it up. It's called a Queerhood Watch is what they're called. They DM'd me, and the first thing they DM is a video of mine. And then they said something along the lines of, I'll just pull it up 1 second. Queerhood Watch. They said, like partly is why I don't want to talk about it is because I feel like we ended on a clean note, and that
with you and them.
Yeah, but then it can also ignite, some more stuff that I don't really want to go into, but here we are. I've started.
But I think I just want to pause on that. I agree with you, but I think the intention is for us to unpack the nuance and the layers of these conversations. And I actually think that the conversation that you ended up having with them was really fucking beautiful. And it was like, for me, an example of how these sticky situations can actually be resolved when you hold a place of love and authenticity.
So yeah,
but anyway, fuck.
No, it's too late. Here we are. They forwarded a picture of me and said, "Hi, we are a collective of marginalized members of the LGBTQIA plus community. We do a lot of work around representation. I am one of the queer people of color members of the collective. I watched your video here. Can I ask you I think they mean if you have any POC/BIPOC heritage." And the video is a video that's on my Instagram, and I had before I released this video prepared for this conversation. So I'm instantly like, oh fuck, it's like it's over a year later. I thought I had covered myself and that I wouldn't have to ever have this conversation, So, I screenshotted to you and I was like, here we go. And essentially in this video, I paint myself in multiple colors, and I'm talking about it's a poem, spoken word kind of thing. And it's about these paints representing the different layers of conditioning and trauma and stuff going over me, and then having to peel the layers again, similar to what I do with the spiral or what we do with any kind of personal development, is we're peeling the onion in a way. And this was my artistic ritual of going into that. And when I did it, I used some black in it, and then during, like, when I'm at the peak of all of the conditioning, I like rub all the gold, the blue, the green, the red, the pink, the black, the cream all across my body, and the ruling color is black, and it goes and it takes over my whole body. So by the end of it, majority of my body is black. And I'm not thinking about this when I'm doing it. I'm just in it, in my own personal space, doing it. And then when I look at the footage back, I'm like, oh, okay.
Mm.
What does this mean? Like, is this blackface?
Mm.
And then I first just have a conversation with a few of my white friends, just like people that live with me. And I'm like, hey, what do you reckon about this? And like, well, it's art, but yes, it does sort of look a bit like that as well, You're not characterizing anyone, but yes, it's very evident that you're a white person and now you have black skin, black paint over you. And I was like, okay, let me reach out to some people. So I reached out to Nyani So, someone from Africa who has like African roots, who is very black. And
He lives in South Africa. He, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
he's, but
very,
also I just want to say, anyway, I'll just continue. I'll shut the fuck up for a minute.
I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I just did something like an art ritual that now could possibly, before I release it, I want to have a check-in with some of my friends of color, and get a perspective, because it might actually have some racial charge that I'm not sure of. And he's like, yeah, send it over. He watches it and he's like, look, dude, like, it's fine. Like, and I also, I'm pretty good around this stuff. And I was like, yeah, like, okay, I am going to put into consideration that Nyani So has done a lot of work. Like, he's a spiral practitioner. He's done so many fucking rituals. He takes his personal development like quite militantly. Like, he does work 24/7 on himself. So I think he's not going to get that triggered by racial stuff. And also, I wanted to go to, like, sort of, as the story progresses, I was like, let's go straight to Africa. Like, let's go where these majority of black people are just from. Let's see what they think. But I also know blackface sort of came in America, so I was like, all right, let's go to Illuminati Congo.
Who is also
Like, I reach out to him. I still check because he's at African person in America. He also has a mix of other things, but I check in with him. But he's also like, ascension level 10 million. So
he's like, no one is black, no one is white, everyone
color,
is
like, he is sort of a bit in that Sigourney space of like, I don't see color, but he also gets it, as a.
It's not that it's not. I think for Illuminati, it's not, I don't see color. It's like, let's be specific.
Let's be very specific.
Black skin, no one has white skin.
Yeah, well, he said that on my podcast on the cultural preparation. Is like, what shade are you? Because I've never seen someone with just pure white skin. I've never seen someone with pure black skin. Yeah. Anyways, whole different discussion. He says it's fine, and then I reach out to Luca Lesson, who's here and he is colored. He is not like African or First Nation person.
He's Greek.
He's Greek, but he's actually also more something else. I can't remember. He's not really. He identifies as Greek, but he did a test.
Okay, whole different topic. Okay,
but he's of color regardless. And
but it's important to note that you would have reached out to him because he's an activist and he's very vocal in these.
Extremely full-on activist. He's not from the spiritual community like us. He is on a whole different. He's like an activist. He is deeply educated in all these areas. Someone that I'm quite intimidated by in these areas. And I was like, cool, I'm going to reach out to him. And he's also like, look, it's not blackface, it's art, and I'm willing to, like, anyone that calls you out, I'm willing to sort of back you up. It's like, also, you may still trigger some people, and but overall, that's not what you're doing.
Yeah.
And again, it's just me. So it's like 3 people that I've reached out to.
Yes.
And I'm feeling confident enough to put it out at this point. I put it out. A few indigenous people had liked it, one commented on it, and I'm like, okay, like I feel like this is
There's no feathers being ruffled here.
I'm pretty sweet. And then
Mm.
now I've forgotten about that piece of art. I just, I archive majority of my old posts. I just like that one because it's a video and it's colorful and fun, so I kept it on there.
Mm.
And then yeah, these people had reached out, and I was like, here we go, here we go. And first I just sent a voice message like, hey, look, I don't super feel comfortable telling you my heritage because I don't know you and I don't know who this page is. I don't know what the agenda is. Maybe if you want to like hit me up on your personal page and have a bit of a conversation before that, I'm open to that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it. Like that's a fair ask if it's person to person, whereas it's like if you're coming at someone from an organizational point, that can feel really intimidating.
Yeah.
Whoa, there's this whole organization who, is asking me these questions. I think that's fair.
With like anonymity, like I am very personal here, and they're anonymous over there.
Yes.
And they're like, thanks for getting back to me. We appreciate what you're saying in regards to your personal heritage. And they went on to explain a bit of who they are, and the person that was reaching out.
Yeah, we don't need to know about their personal stuff.
But essentially, like, they, within that, they're like, hey, like, to be honest, I love your vibe and many of your works I find really beautiful. But yeah, they're like, we want to talk. And then I said, hey, look, I appreciate that, but I would still prefer if I can see who you are and to have I'm open to having this conversation, but I want it to be personal rather than. And they said, I understand. And then they screenshotted, and this is where I just felt, oh no, because I had seen some of their posts of there's a page of calling people out, and they screenshotted these 4 posts of just the moments of like where I'm fully black, and I'm like, and they just wrote, and I hope you can understand too with these. And and it just said, let's yarn. And I just felt like, oh, like this, yes. And a bit of Dane, yes. And like, this is 4 moments of a few minute video, and I just pressed video chat, instantly. I was like, I'm not running away, but I like, if you want to be that direct with me, I'm going to be that direct with you. Like, answer. And I wrote, like, you can leave your face out if you like. Let's talk, because they said, let's yarn. And they said, sorry, of course. Like, I want to stay anonymous. This is our process. I have a very distinct voice. And then they just said, do you know about Scarlett Adams? And, just happened to do that I do know, because this year was the first time I had watched RuPaul Drag Race, the Australian edition, and Scarlett is a queen on there who I personally did not like their character on the show, but also could not deny who is phenomenally talented, but quite the bitch. But during it, like near the end of the season, they made it to the last final 4, which is where they choose a winner. The few episodes before that, they were talking, they have like their backstage talk thing, and someone's like, from memory, do you have anything you regret doing in your career? And Scarlett's like, yeah, I did blackface once and it was wrong, and have a bit of a talk about that. And they're like, I feel so bad for doing it. I didn't know at the time. I grew up in a place where it was quite racist and that was just the normal,
Yeah.
Not doing blackface, obviously, but like
Racism is not seen
race.
as racism. It's
Yeah,
just
it's just seen as normal. Uh, and there was another queen, etc., etc. This non-binary, for sure, person who's like young, the youngest one, quite educated in the space. Is like, hey, like, you really need to fucking like make a statement of this and really have to do your work. Like, this is not okay, and like really laid the law on it, which was great. And then when it came to, they do their like at end of each episode, they do the catwalk, rah rah, and then RuPaul, who I don't know what nationality RuPaul is, but RuPaul is of color, was like, okay, like we need to address
RuPaul's black.
black, like I don't know,
RuPaul, I'm pretty sure RuPaul is black.
was like, hey, we need to address, like, it has come to everyone's awareness that you have done blackface previously. We do not support blackface, and we feel like you have a moment right now to use your this platform to maybe share where you're at. And they like teared up and shared a big apology and like taking as much accountability as they possibly can in that moment. RuPaul's like, look, yeah, again, we don't support that, but we can see that you are remorseful and you understand that's not right, and it doesn't feel right to kick you off the show right now. So RuPaul is called out and called back in and sort of moved forward. And, you know, this has become a hot topic around Scarlett Adams. So yes, I was like, yes, I know. And they're like, you know, quite damaging to our collective. We're going a bit backwards and forwards about that. And then they're like, you know, they're like, so I see your intentions here with your video work. I was really enjoying it, actually, and feeling connected, resonating until it got to your face. By the way, if you need time to think or process, this is okay. And I was like, beautiful. I can't remember because I'm sending voice messages rather than texts to like give my sincerity and like actually allowing to hear my humanness throughout this. And essentially I was like, hey, look, yeah, I can totally understand how that can come across that way. Definitely not my intention. Here's a little about the intention of it, you know, and I was using each color as a ritual. This one's about my like conditioning around my queerness. This is stuff from my parents. This is stuff around creativity. This is the stuff that I'm not aware of. This is blah. And we're going a bit backwards and forth. Like I'm sort of sharing that. And, you know, they said, thank you for the acknowledgement. And we're going a bit backwards and forth around it. And this, they're like, you know, it looks like blackface. And I don't super need to go into the bits and pieces we're going back and forth on, but essentially, by the end of it, they're like, our process is when someone flags something with us, we look into it. Then we contact the person or the group that has been flagged, asking things like I've asked you on behalf of Queer Neighborhood Watch. We are very interested in getting open community conversations. So then we feel that we still have a concern. If we still have a concern, the community member who flagged it has a reason to reshare it and open up the dialogue to create. Essentially, they're just saying like, hey, look, we post this stuff and allow the community to
be the judge. Yeah.
To be the judge, you know? You know, and within it, I said like, hey, look, like I understood that this was what it looked like. I reached out to some people and they sort of weren't having it at the time. They're like, you know, 3 people, what does that mean? And I even said like in it, I was like, I reached out to 3 people, which doesn't mean that means everybody, but that's just who I reached out to at the time before doing it. And then I felt solid. And they're like, hey, look, you know, this is something we're going to have to post, but like we understand this is a new way of sharing community care and holding each other accountable. So if you need some time, uh, before we do it, like
Mm.
before you like to see if you want to change your mind. Because I was sort of like open to the conversation, but also like not going, yeah, I'll delete it, or I'm wrong or whatever. I'm sort of like I'm open to seeing if I am wrong, but at the same time, I feel like I've sort of done the work around this. I was like, hey, look, yep, I hear you. I am sorry if this has personally offended you and traumatized you or re-traumatized you. That's the last thing I want. Like, this is what I do for work. I work with people's traumas, and like, I don't want to create that for other people.
Mm.
What I'm going to do is reach out to my people again and maybe a few others and see if given what you've shared with me and with another year since that, if the lenses on this has changed, and maybe before it didn't come across as blackface, but now in the current culture, current times, that it does.
Mm.
Left it there. Messaged a couple people. I reached out to an Indigenous friend, like Australian Indigenous friend, to have the conversation. They're like, hey, can we have this next week or the week after? It's NAIDOC week, and that's just not where I'm at. And I was like, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I apologize for that. That could come across as insensitive. I wouldn't have done it unless, I was in need. I didn't say what it was. I said, hey, look, it's like some racial accountability stuff for myself.
Mm.
And then I was like, went into our phone. I just straight up called Genesis, and like, we have history, friends in a certain manner, like not tight friends, but like we've connected over the years through the music industry. He used to stay at our house at the God Queen house, but then not long after that, he become a really big fucking star. Like, he's like,
Yeah.
music
Genesis
is
like
everywhere. His album is just across the world. He's getting interviewed by the biggest people, doing biggest songs, like
he's an
doing
icon.
big numbers. He's an icon, and I'm a massive fan of him. Like, I feel like I'm more of a fan than a friend with him.
Mm.
Maybe beforehand I was more of a friend than a fan, but the tables have turned, and we haven't kept that much in touch since the album has been released. He's been busy as fuck. The times that I have hit him up, he's taking care of something that I've needed help with around his show and stuff. And I was like, I don't know if he's going to answer. Like, one, he could just be busy. Two, does he answer my calls anymore? So I was nervous about this altogether,
The
and
bomb.
nervous just about my new famous friend. And then he's like, hey, I'm like, hey, man. And he's like, how you doing? And I was like, I'm good, but also not so good. I'm in a pickle right now. And he's like, oh, okay, what's up? And I was like, have you got a moment to talk? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, have you got a moment to talk about something that's sort of racially charged? And he's like, okay, yeah. And then I sort of explained the situation to him, and he's like, all right, send me the video. I'll call you back. Send him the video. He calls me back, and he's like, yo, like, you're my friend, and I feel completely fine calling you out. And I'm like, he's like, this isn't blackface. I was like, ooh, I'm taking like such a deep breath in this moment. And we sort of have an unpack about it. And I'm like, I called out, like, I talked to other people, and I was in this ritual of making art, and I just wasn't thinking about that. He's like, yeah, was anything to do with race? And I was like, no, it was like all personal shit for myself, you know. And he's like, well, then it's got nothing to do with characterizing black people. It's just that you just happen to have black on you. I was like, yeah. And watching it back, because I was watching it at the same time he's watching it, like just imagining how I was going with him. And I was like, with awareness now, I'm watching it back. If I had thought about it a bit more, I would have, because I pour the black from the top of my head, and I like it sort of like to take over, like to pour down my body. I was like, I probably would have like poured the black on my knees or my
Yeah.
feet or something like that, because it's black face, not black legs or whatever. And we have a bit of a laugh about that. But I'm like also like, I'm because he's making jokes about this situation with me at this point, and I'm just trying to keep a bit of the banter up to be friendsish, but I'm also just terrified that there's this one wrong word or one wrong thing I say.
Mm.
I just want to pretty much get the fuck off this conversation, out of here by this point, because my nervous system is so shot. But I'm just so grateful that
Yeah.
on multiple levels that I have a black African friend who lives in Australia, who is like all his music is racially charged, to like talking about like this is no longer going to be a thing, and we are fighting back, So I was like, if anyone is going to tell me you've done wrong, it's going to be him,
Mm-mm.
But yeah, we have a little chat, get off the phone, and I'm still shook as fuck, but it's what it is. And then later on that night, they messaged me and they're like, hey, thank you so much for this very thoughtful and compassionate response when I had said about, I'm going to reach out to my people and I'm sorry if this personally offended you.
Yeah.
I'm the person you were yarning with earlier. I've just come back on comms. The rest of the collective have also looked into the video and your work, and we can all see your intention and the important healing element in your work. Something that's not important that I sort of said to them that they're sort of responding to, because I was a bit like, hey, if we're going to have this conversation, I feel like you're being a bit patronizing to me. I can't continue this conversation. And they just addressed that and just like apologized. We have contacted, and they're just saying like, we have contacted many people who work within the LGBTQIA plus leaders. We have had lots of incredible people be open to looking within to these hard conversations. Sadly, we've also had the opposite of that. Many people who ignore our communication requests for open discussion. So your response is so much more appreciated. Even more is your heartfelt apology to me personally. Thank you. And I understand if you are still processing. This work is about us all healing, both individually and as a collective. One last thing I want to say is that I can't really summon the words to explain what it feels like to live with black skin. Anyways, I hope you have a good night. Thanks for the work you have already done.
Beautiful. I see that as a win, I see that as a win. And I think also it's worth mentioning a couple of things, like you're in a position of extreme privilege for a few reasons, like, and I really just want, if you're out there and you're white and you're in a situation, sometimes it's not appropriate to reach out to your black or brown friends and just ask them. Sometimes that if you don't have those established friendships and relationships, and if you aren't sensitive about the ways that you could potentially be triggering them or re-traumatizing them, or really getting them to labor for you, I think that's something to be aware of. But I know that you, Paisley, you have put a lot of time and energy and love into cultivating your network. So with these people, you have rapport and you have trust, and people love you, and they love you because you care. They love you because you fucking care about human beings. And I think that's a testament to your character and the way that, you could have just been like, this is some bullshit. Like, I don't need to talk to you. I don't even know who the fuck you are. But, taking the time to have these difficult conversations and apologize if you have offended someone personally, because, you can be as careful as you want. Someone might get offended by what you do.
Yes.
In any context.
Yes.
And I think you and I as people, micro influencers, like I've done shit that people have been offended by or triggered by or traumatized by. At the time, it wasn't my intention, but it happened. And like writing the line between understanding that, like, I never want to hurt someone. I never want to hurt someone. And if I do, then I'm sorry. But I'm not going to live my life trying to avoid hurting everyone at the expense of my authentic expression. And I think that is, it's a difficult line to play on. You know, it's not easy. And the reason why I say that is because I see so many people not saying anything for fear of getting it wrong. They're so careful. And so their creativity, their art, their expression is going through so many filters. And you can tell that it's fragile and it's careful because they're so afraid of ruffling feathers. And I think that comes from a good place, comes from a beautiful place. But also the hidden ego in that is that you're not willing to take responsibility if you make a mess.
Yeah.
You know, it's like art and expression and speaking is a fucking messy game. But as long as you're willing to take responsibility, then, you know, you can push the boundaries in yourself and you can play at your edge and play at your limits. But you just got to be willing to, you know, if you hurt some people, apologize where you need to. That's it.
Yeah. Like, I think that's an important thing to talk about is like my privilege in that area is, I have a rapport with these people and, you know, it's not like this is the first time I'm having this conversation, you know, it's like, this is something that I've publicly continued to have these conversations, for a while now. So it's not like I'm like all of a sudden trying to like first time check in my ally card or something like that. There's rapport, and also that I had the privilege of doing the work, you know, like that my communication levels of like, because I was deeply triggered throughout this and my nervous system, all it wanted to do was to go into defense mode, you know, and just like start accusing them of whatever, you know, like leave me alone, block them, whatever it is. But I could witness that and go, this is like, you know, like the leftover parts that I don't know will ever be gone, but like white guilt, you know, which is just doesn't serve in these conversations to start playing the white guilt card, you know, because it's just reeks of like poor you know, white tears is like that. And I was just looking at, because I've seen there's people that I'm friends with, not like tight friends with, one that I'm sort of cool with, but other people that I'm like internet friends with or like work friends with who have been called out on the same page, you know? And I'm just looking and I'm just like, this situation could have blown over so much quicker if they had the tools or the awareness to be able to have these conversations. I don't know what they've done. I've seen bits and pieces because they've screenshotted the conversation. I'm like, like you could have avoided that, you know, if you just showed up a bit more, if you just took a bit more time to respond maybe, or whatever it is. But, you know, in these situations when someone doesn't really own what's going on and have awareness for where the other person is coming from, and seeing the privilege differences, that it can very quickly go into a place that you don't want to go, you know, where this you have re-traumatized this person by ignoring them, by saying the wrong thing, by not giving the presence and awareness that I assume they feel just all the time, you know? So then when they create a personal conversation with someone, because of, you know, I think majority of these people that, you know, I've witnessed, you know, their intention is never to come across as racist or sexist or transphobic or anything like this. But just there has been a little slip in language or presentation or something like that, or history
and often it's ignorance as well. You just don't know. You don't know the impact that your language will have on somebody else. I'm sure that I think the area for me personally that I'm the least aware of is like disability spaces, like and I, you know, like I'm very able-bodied and I don't really have any disabilities, so I'm sure that a lot of my language would be very problematic in that space. And that's something that, you know, I need to look at next. And
Uh-huh.
and I'm going to make a lot of mistakes on that. And probably someone's going to call me out at some point. I have to be willing to listen when that happens.
Uh-huh.
But yeah.
Yeah.
But on
So
that, you were talking about nervous system just real quickly, because I told you, like, I've blocked people before who
yeah.
attempted to cancel me and call me out from a place of like hiding behind an anonymous private account with no followers and whatever, and just coming at me from a place of like venomous assault.
Uh-huh.
Like, I'm a fucking human being first.
Uh-huh.
My primary responsibility is my safety and my well-being.
Uh-huh.
If you don't love me, you don't know me, you're not coming at me from a place of like, you want to educate me or you want to make me aware. If you just want to like straight off the bat attack me,
Mm-hmm.
I don't give a fuck. Like, I will block you.
Uh-huh.
And I feel very comfortable with that,
Uh-huh.
because if I'm not in a place where I feel safe enough to actually go and unpack and listen, and why would I feel safe with you if you off the bat you're coming at it from this angle? It's like you haven't done your work either.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's a responsibility. If you're going to be an activist, different if you're just a marginalized person, you've got your trauma for sure. But if you want to step into the space of activism where you are fighting for something and advocating for something, then I think there is a responsibility that you have to take to actually regulate your own nervous system, to be on your own healing journey so that you can better hold space in these conversations, so that you can come at it from a place of like willing to be in those difficult discussions without just, you know, getting into the like fucking attacker mode.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, like that's something that I'm learning, because I'm on both sides. In some spaces I will be the bad guy.
Yep.
It's just a fact, you know, and in
Yep.
some spaces I will be, you know, the hero, you know, and it's like these are just things that we can swap around. But I think for me anyway, if I feel that there is no genuine care for a resolution and for a positive outcome,
Uh-huh.
then I won't entertain that discussion.
Yep, for sure. I hear that. And that was something I was very curious about throughout that. I was like, do I just get the fuck out of this conversation? Like, or do I just delete that post, you know? Like, but I was just, no, like, I feel like it's right for me to just make it to the end of this, whatever, wherever that is. I'm going into the unknown. This could go so many different ways, and just until maybe there was a moment where my nervous system blew out and I had to run away. You know, like when they replied and said everything's cool, I was like, hey, look, I'm just acknowledging this message. I appreciate your words. My nervous system is still very shook right now. I'm just going to need a day or so to reply, you know?
Yeah.
And I did take a couple of days to reply back to them to say, hey, look, thank you for your time, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. I think, you know, like I think initially they approached with a level of like, at least there was like some, you know, courtesy and respect there. So I think that, you know, that for me is,
it started off that way, and then it went a bit more on like my perception was I was being a bit patronized and not fully heard, but I could also understand, you know, but it was just also like not equipped, you know, for this. But I was like, but I am, you know, like I'm trusting that I am. And a big part of my nervous system was, like, the two biggest parts were like, no, that's not my intention, you know, like that's not what I wanted. I don't, even if it's this page and it's this person's perception, I don't want to come across as racist, and especially doing blackface, you know, that's like a high level racism, you know. And I've done the right things, I swear. You know, that was happening. But then but also like the main thing that was sitting there for me was I have clients that are Black and that are First Nations here.
Yeah.
And the last thing I wanted was for that to come out in that lens.
Yeah.
Paisley's done blackface, and for them to go, oh, all this work, you know, because I've held them through so much trauma, conditioning, stories and help them say my life has changed because of you.
Yeah.
No, I just imagine that would be so shit. It just, yeah, I just devalidate everything and go, oh no, like, a white man, this, that, did this, and everything I've done is, this has been very extreme, but it can definitely happen. I've seen it happen. Go, this isn't valid anymore, and I didn't want that for them. I just felt so much like empathy and like upset of just like, oh no, this isn't just about me. This is about a lot of my clients,
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really important. That's what, in my long-winded post that I replied, it was like, for me, it's like, do you genuinely care? It's just that. It's like the bottom line is, do you genuinely care more than justifying the way you were right? Like, if you genuinely care, then you want to see, have I actually caused harm? Have I actually alienated someone? Have I made someone feel excluded? Like, those questions are, like the questions that I'm curious about, and that I'm, like, I want to cultivate that in myself and in the people, in my peers, my spiritual leader peers. It's like, if your first impulse is still on the defense, instead of seeing, well, have I actually caused some harm, and coming at that from a curious perspective, an interested perspective, like, I think that's where the shift has to be. And that's something that I would just, like to see. Like, I know we're going to wrap up, and I don't really want to open another can of worms, but
but you're about to.
Well, because here's the thing, right? So braids, all right, hair
okay, another can of worms for sure.
It is a can of worms for sure. So I think it was 2 years ago now. Yeah, 2 years ago, I did a photo shoot, and one of the looks in my photo shoot was, I had 4 braids down my hair. All right. Call them cornrows. I don't know. I had hair extensions in 4 of them, not my whole head. But in the past, 10, 15 years ago, I have had braid extensions, like box braids, right? This was like at a time when none of this discussion was in my field at all. The people who did my braids were African, and it was like, yeah, girl, and do your hair. And it was like this beautiful, loving, bonding experience. Because if you're getting braids, you're there for hours, right? You're there for hours. So, the women in my circle, like, I have a lot of Black women friends, and from South Africa, from Ethiopia, from different places in Africa. And when I had my braids, there's zero issue for them. They are not offended. It doesn't personally, they don't feel like I'm taking anything from them culturally. They don't feel like it's cultural appropriation. For them, it's not an issue. Then in the last, few years, more recently, it's very at the forefront that braids is a form of cultural appropriation. And so there have been times where I've been really defensive about that. And there have been times where I'm like, okay, let me look into this. So I watched a couple documentaries. I read some articles, is it okay if you're not Black to wear braids? And I stopped. Like, the last time that I had 4 braid extensions was 2 years ago. And I don't use those photos for anything anymore. And not because I think that what I did was wrong, but because I don't want to create upset and harm for people, potentially, is one reason. But the other reason is because I don't want to have to defend myself every time I use that photo. And where I sit with it, with the braid situation, because I watched the documentaries, and what was shared in there is that when, like, for me, cultural appropriation is when you take something and you profit off it and you don't give credit to where it actually came from. Whereas for me, my whole music career, my whole fucking genre is soul music, is R&B, is hip hop. Everything that I write is influenced by Black music. It has its roots in Africa and in gospel music and in American gospel, Black gospel music. So for me, it's like, what is the difference between me having like 4 braid extensions versus my whole fucking discography of music that I've ever written is like hip hop, soul, R&B, you know? Like if I'm going to not wear braids, does that mean I'm also going to not sing and write the music that I write? You know, like that for me became this like, whoa, like internal fucking like fight. Like what music do I make if I can't make this music? Who am I as an artist? It's like, yeah, you know, and yeah, I can still be a poet and use words, but in terms of the way that I write and the music that I love the most and the way that I deliver it and the way that I produce my music, like all of that is heavily, heavily influenced by Black music. And I don't know if that's something that I'm willing to let go of. I don't know if I'm willing to, and how do I take those influences out of how do I get that out of my brain? Like that's difficult for me. So it's easy for me to just go, all right, no braids in my hair. Like that's easy. But if I were to try and extricate any Blackness from my music, how the fuck do I do that? You know, it's like, it's so infused in my musical identity. And I think the ways that I can make it, I guess, more okay is by always acknowledging that this is not a white thing. This is not like something I created myself. Like I know where the roots of my music comes from. I know what my influences are, and to be very honest and upfront about that. And to also use my platform and use like any profit that I do receive to make sure that I'm actually being an advocate and being an ally in those spaces. So that's the way that I feel in integrity with who I am as Alpha Mama, as an artist.
Well, you know, like an example that I can use because I'm like a massive hip hop head is like I always hear Eminem say like, I am a guest in the house of hip hop, you know, like this isn't my house. I'm a guest here, you know, as a white person, and he's widely like respected by the vast majority of Black MCs in hip hop, you know, not everyone, certain people like get the fuck Eminem out of here, but he's widely admired, and so to a lot of them are top 5 MC, you know, it's like regardless of race, his skill level is amazing. But yes, he's a guest. And then there's another, you know, like bringing up this topic, I don't want to bring out this person's name because I know they're avoiding any kind of publicity at the moment. A famous, like very well-known white Australian rapper that I am friends with years ago, like 2019, maybe 2018, was like, I don't feel comfortable doing hip hop anymore. I'm trying to transition to like folk music or something that's like origins is white. I will forever be influenced. And at the time I was like, what are you talking about, bro? Like I get it, but like why? You know, like it's evolved past that. And then like when the uprising of Black Lives Matters and you know the unfortunate situation of George Floyd, and then all this conversation of cultural appropriation came up, situation, I want to say the murder of I was like, oh fuck, you know, Bob, this person's alias name, Bob, was like, I was like, messaged them, I was like, wow, like you were on this a long while ago, you know. I'm proud to hear that was in your awareness so long ago. So yeah, I guess that's a curious conversation to continue to unravel of like, music and influence and being a guest and what is okay and what's not okay. Like just continuing to have that conversation is great.
I think it's important, like what I've learned, because a lot of my racial discussions happen with Yana and Yaniso. So they're not coming into the conversation from an American perspective. Here's the thing. It's like, if you talk to an African person who's Black, who lives in Africa, a lot of times they won't have the same issues that American African people have, because the history is very different.
Yes.
So like, my Black girlfriends who are from Africa, they don't give a fuck if I'm getting cornrows or braids. It's because it's like, it's never, from my understanding, it's never been something, hairstyles has never been something that's been taken from them, that's been stolen from them, that's been that they've been oppressed for in Africa. That's how they wear their hair. And it's like, if you go there, like, yeah, they want to give you beads and they want to, like, share their culture with you. But in America, because of the very oppressive, racist systems there, in that women couldn't wear their hair in certain hairstyles and would be subject to extreme discrimination and racism for the hairstyles they've had, then to see a white woman wearing that same hairstyle and being celebrated for it, I can understand where that comes from.
Yes.
But I think moving forward in the future, culturally, I don't think that there is a way that you can pull things out. I don't think there's a way. It's like, once something's mixed, it's very difficult to take it out. It's like, I think the key and what I would love to see is like, yeah, just like more informed, like be informed over what is influencing you. And actually give props and due props and pay respect to your influences and where you are, where you're getting your things from, instead of just saying, oh, I created this, I'm the first person who invented box braids. Say that's fucking bullshit. Just credit where you got it from and actually build meaningful relationships with the cultures that you're actually engaging with. I think that is the biggest key in this whole discussion in the spiritual communities who are whitewashing different things. It's like, if you have a genuine established relationship with a person of color, with an Indigenous person, with a Black person, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to navigate this whole thing. And if you don't, then start. Let's quickly review. Did we say anything that's going to be an issue?
I don't fucking know. I don't know. Possibly. And that conversation will continue.
Yeah.
I really hope this gives perspective and catharsis and, some kind of resonating moment to everyone, and that if it has been sensitive for anyone, that you feel okay in this space, or maybe you've left and you're not even hearing this. But yeah, our intention is definitely never to upset, to traumatize or re-traumatize anyone by having these conversations. I feel my intention is to use our voice, use our privilege, use our influence for my audience is, still majority white people that maybe don't have this awareness around these conversations and how to navigate it, to be able to be a leader in directing in the right space and setting the example. So yeah, I hope if you're listening to this that you do get something from it and be able to integrate that into your life.
Definitely. Yeah. And I just want to say, every person that we've spoken about on this in this episode, I deeply love, even if we're not very close and, we don't have a strong rapport, I'm trying as much as I can to come from a place of love. And I believe that love can encompass accountability. Love can hold difficult and uncomfortable conversations. But we have to remember that we always want to move from and toward a place of love.
Yeah. For this example, we've done a lot of talking about at the start around SIGs. I would love to reach out. I probably will reach out. I will reach out to her and let her know that you and I have had this conversation and it will be coming out. And if she wants and feels comfortable or safe, or if it's worth her time, like, I'm definitely open to her coming on and having a conversation if she needs also someone that is a mutual ground to be in the conversation, to have a bit of a tribal talk about this, I'm definitely open to that, but also would totally understand if she's like, no,
Yeah, totally.
Mm.
I mean, you know, you have strong rapport with her, and that's a beautiful thing about you, is that you know, you're a great friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're someone who people will respect and will listen to. So yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. But who knows? Also, maybe she just might go, you know, Paisley, you're not cool. Not cool. You're off the lineup, and I would totally understand that too.
I mean, what, I don't know. For me, it's like all these things are just information, you know. And
Yeah.
I think if you're a person wanting to step into personal development work, you're going to choose a leader or a practitioner who you resonate with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is something, you know, that is hard to wear. Like when you're building a brand for yourself, every fucking single thing that you say
Yeah. Yeah.
is building your brand and your reputation.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I want to be seen as someone who can hold space for different viewpoints and opinions, and someone who can, like, in my sessions, and you would be the same, right? It's like, you can tell me anything. I don't care
Yeah.
what you've done.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold space for you for your healing. If you've murdered someone, or you fucking did blackface when you were, you know, blah, 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 or you did this, it's like, I'm not going to sit there and judge you. That's not my job. My job as a facilitator is to hold space for you, for your healing, for your transformation. And I want to be trusted in that space. And I also want to be seen as someone who deeply cares about social justice, racial justice, gender justice, all of it, and speak up where necessary.
Yeah, the same. Like, I won't judge. I definitely will have a conversation to make sure that there's the right steps going forward to making sure that's clean for my side as well. You know, that I'm not, you know, for instance, if it's a murder, that no one knows about it, you know, and then it's like, and then I become an accomplice, you know. I don't, obviously.
Yes. There are obviously certain ethical and professional standards that we adhere to. But what I mean is, I never want, I mean, fuck, if it happens, it happens. But, you know, I have clients who literally hold the opposite views from each other. Both are my clients. I love them both. I have clients who are like extremely anti-vax and extremely pro-vax, as an example.
Yeah.
I love them both. And for me, it's like, I try to see how you can see things from both sides. And it's like, my job as a facilitator is not to try and get you to think a certain way. It's actually to get you to go into your own psyche and find where your hidden biases are, where your traumas are, how it's shaping the way you see the world, and work through that stuff at your pace, at a pace that's sustainable for you as an individual. I think that is really important.
Okay, let's wrap this up, because we're getting close to the 2-hour mark, which we've never done. So,
but it was a good episode.
It's a good episode. I'm sure people that are listening, they needed to like this much context, you know, to actually really spell it out and take some time across this topic. So, one thing we're going to start doing at the end is, if you've made it this far, please, subscribe, like, follow, comment, rate, all the things, because it does help us get it out more. But also for us, like, let us know what you did need today.
Yeah, let us know which part, what line, which paragraph did you really resonate with, and you felt like, yes, I needed to hear this today. We would love to hear your feedback. Send us a message, or you can also, I think you can review, right?
You can review on the different platforms. I feel like maybe it could be just fun that you just start under the post. At least if you don't feel like spelling it out, just let us know, as simple as, I needed this today.
I needed this today.
Like,
yes.
Let's actually lean into that energy of just, I needed this today.
Hell yeah. Let's do it. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We love you so much.
All right. Love you all. Peace.